Number 5. The Ghost Bride of Galvez. To Texans, it's no secret that Hotel Galvez is haunted. The Grand Galvez, as it's known now, first opened its doors in 1911, and since then has been said to be home to all manner of haunting, but the most retold story is that of Audra, the Ghost Bride of Galvez. Audra was a 25-year-old bride-to-be getting married there. Her betrothed was a young sailor who would frequently leave her on her lonesome while he was out on a voyage. During the periods where the sea would separate the two lovers, Audra would rent out room 501, climb out the ladder to the rooftop, and wait on the rooftop turret with love in her heart for her sweetheart to return. Now, one day during a catastrophic storm, Audra was told that her fiance's ship capsized, and overcome with grief, Audra took her own life on the roof of the hotel. Tragically, as if this wasn't sad enough, her groom would arrive a few days later, eager to surprise and re-encounter his bride as he'd survived the capsizing. And although he was never able to be with her physically again, if you believe the stories, she might still linger around the premises. Visitors claim that Audra frequents the 5th floor, and in particular, her spirit tends to hang around the matrimonial suite and room 501. Some claim they hear random doors slamming, or strong currents of chills, flickering lights, the usual who's who of a ghost haunting a hotel. Other stories tell of seeing a candle lit on the rooftop, wondering if it's the ghost of Audra still waiting for her beloved to come back to her. The attendants at the Galvez claim that there's difficulties making electronic keys for room 501 since they're prone to malfunction frequently. Visitors to the Galvez go out specifically looking for Audra now, hoping to catch a glimpse of the spirit. If you ever go to Texas, be sure to check it out if you're brave enough. And if you're looking for more freaky stories, true crime, ghosts, cryptids, basically the whole 9 yards, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. So click on that bell and click on through and subscribe and find something to scream at. But do that at the end of this video, okay? We got way more mysteries in Texas coming up. Number 4. The Icebox Killer. The Icebox Killer refers to an incredibly grisly crime that haunted Houston, and if you believe the conspiracies, might be entangled in a much larger web of interest. Take a listen to this brutal crime. On June 23, 1965, 2 Houston police officers were sent for a fairly benign wellness check and went to investigate the home of a suburban family, the Rogers, Fred and Edwina, and their son Charles. Edwina's nephew was concerned because he hadn't seen or heard from his aunt in a concerning amount of time. The 2 officers went to check the house and got no response from a knock. A look around in the backyard, they found a makeshift barricade on the back door, which was more than a little suspicious, so they entered the house. One of the 2 detectives opened the fridge instinctively and saw a pile of raw meat in the fridge. The detective dismissed it as boar or pig, and you can probably see where this is going. They opened the vegetable crisper and were disgusted at what they found: the heads of Edwina and Fred Rogers. Police suspected initially that the son Charles had been behind it, but why, no one was particularly sure. Now, here's where this already upsetting strange case gets wild. There are allegations that Charles Rogers was present the day of the JFK assassination, and some allege he was one of the 3 tramps photographed with police escort by Dealey Plaza. The conspiracy alleges that Charles Rogers, who was a former Marine and served in the Office of Naval Intelligence, was involved somehow in the larger assassination plot, and the claim is that somehow his parents discovered his involvement with the conspiracy and he had to silence them and flee. A bold claim, but Charles Rogers was never found. No proof of a body, despite being declared dead. Now, did he vanish? Or was he himself silenced to tie up a loose knot as part of something infinitely larger than himself? We may never truly have the answers for this one.
In at 3, Kenny Veach. On November 10, 2014, a hiker by the name of Kenny Veach disappeared overnight in the mountains of Nevada, and since then, his disappearance has remained a complete mystery to the public and even those that knew him. Prior to his disappearance, Veach commented on a YouTube video, claiming to have found a cave in the area of Nellis Air Force Base. He wrote, "I'm a long-distance hiker. One time during one of my hikes out by Nellis Air Force Base, I found a hidden cave. The entrance to the cave was shaped like a perfect capital M. I always enter every cave I find, but as I began to enter this particular cave, my whole body began to vibrate. The closer I got to the cave entrance, the worse the vibrating became. Suddenly I became very scared and hightailed it out there. That was one of the strangest things that ever happened to me." Veach had stated that he would return to the cave, bringing with him a camera and a weapon. happen, and that he did. He posted a video on YouTube showing the hiker looking inside. However, for those hoping to hunt it down themselves, it is almost near impossible considering the vastness of the desert. The events following the video are a complete mystery. All we know is that Veach returned 6 months later, but he was never seen or heard from again. We can only speculate. Was there something more supernatural occurring within the cave, causing the unexplained vibrations? Did he get lost upon his return? But considering his hiking experience, it is doubtful. Did he commit suicide? All we know is that a search party was conducted and his cell phone found near an abandoned mine shaft, yet no body, clothes, or other belongings were ever located. In it to Eilean Mor lighthouse keepers. Eilean Mor is a remote island located within the Flannan Islands. It is completely uninhabited, aside from one lighthouse that once housed a group of keepers whose unexplained disappearances left the world stunned. The island has always sparked interest in people due to the supernatural superstition surrounding it. The islands were named after Saint Flannan, a 6th century Irish bishop who built a small chapel on the island in hopes to deter the spirits he believed haunt the isolated spot. Now on the 26th of December 1900, a small vessel was making its way towards the Flannan Islands. Its destination, Eilean Mor. The vessel was carrying Captain James Harvey and a replacement lighthouse keeper, Joseph Moore. As the vessel drew closer to the island, the pair were surprised to find that no one was there to greet them. They even sent up a warning flare to attract their attention. However, there was no response. As they made their way up to the lighthouse, they immediately noticed something was awry. The door was unlocked, coats missing, and chairs were overturned, as though someone had left in quite the hurry. The island was searched, but no one was ever found, except for a lighthouse log belonging to Thomas Marshall. The last entry was on December 12th. He wrote of severe winds like a which had never been seen in 20 years. He also noted that one of the keepers had been very quiet and the other crying. What makes this log entry particularly peculiar is that there were never any reports of a storm hitting the island. In fact, the weather was calm. Eventually more clues were found. Ropes hewn over rocks which held a brown crate. Perhaps the keepers were attempting to retrieve supplies before a wave washed them all out to sea. I guess we'll never know. And finally, in at number 1, Elisa Lam. Arguably the most infamous unsolved mystery floating around on YouTube, many internet dwellers have attempted to solve this unexplainable death of a young Canadian girl at the Cecil Hotel, but none have been able to crack it, and I doubt they ever will. On February 19, 2013, the body of Elisa Lam was discovered atop the infamous hotel in downtown Los Angeles, floating in the building's water tank, completely naked. Prior to the grisly discovery, Lam had been reported missing at the beginning of the month, and her body was only located after tenants had reported issues with the water supply in the hotel. The root cause? Lam's deceased body floating within it. The discovery was truly horrifying, and the way in which her body was found has left more questions than answers. However, it's not the most disturbing thing that emerged out of this bizarre case. A CCTV video began to float around YouTube of Lam's final moments, which featured her in a frenzied state inside of the hotel elevator. In the disturbing video, Lam can be seen hitting a number of different buttons on the elevator panel, yet the door was never closed. Whether down to a malfunction or something more sinister, Lam's behavior is what sparks the most intrigue. She stands in the corner, almost hiding out of sight from whoever or whatever is on the other side of the doors. She then steps out before quickly stepping back in again, and then eventually leaves the elevator entirely. Now, many theorists on the internet have noted that a shadow that does not belong to Lam can be seen outside of the elevator doors. Personally, I haven't spotted anything, but that doesn't mean that she was completely alone. Now, back to the discovery of her body. Once retrieved from the water tank, it appeared to have decomposed and was bloated, showing hints of green and even marbling on the abdomen. However, there were no signs of foul play or suicide, which left medical professionals completely baffled. I don't think we'll ever know what truly happened to Elisa Lam, but what do you guys think?
Number 5. The Dark Watchers. California is oft considered one of the most beautiful states. It's got gorgeous mountains, lush beaches, sunny days. It's practically a paradise. But behind sun-streaked sands at the peaks of the Santa Lucia Mountains lies a dark secret. A mysterious group of shadowy beings watching over the people below. The locals call them Los Vigilantes Oscuros. Los Vigilantes Oscuros, or the Dark Watchers, were first reported during the 18th century by Spanish settlers who arrived there. The stories would describe these tall, featureless specters that would appear for a moment, serving as a warning before someone's imminent disappearance. It was the last thing you'd ever see. Now, these creatures towered over mortals and looked human enough, but were anything but. They stood 10 to 12 feet tall and were said to be draped in cloaks cloaks or capes, and wore large-brimmed hats like that of a witch. Folklore and oral stories describe these creatures as sternly observing, watching over on high, and seemingly only pursuing those who disturb them. But it is said that those who approach these figures vanish into oblivion, never seen again, not even leaving behind a footprint. So what are they? With hundreds of years worth of reports and sightings, surely someone must have some guess as to what scary shadow people are watching you in the mountains. Now, the prevailing and admittedly kind of dull theory is that the Dark Watchers are a symptom of pareidolia, a very common psychological phenomenon in which the human brain attempts to seek out patterns that it recognizes in something weird. It's why our brain often fills in strange details in the sky. If we see something up there, we can see a flying saucer kind of because we want it to be a flying saucer, you know? Our brain fills in the details we think we see. Encounters of Dark Watchers could just be the shadows of swaying trees or creatures darting about in the night and tired eyes mistaking it for something else. But this video is about unsolved paranormal mysteries, and it's more likely this might be a paranormal phenomenon for which there is no comfortable scientific or reasonable explanation. These creatures through the veil exist in a way I just can't understand. So perhaps it's best for now that we follow their example, and you know what? We just watch. We just observe, we take nothing but photos, we leave footprints, I think that's how it goes, and we keep watching Top 5 Scary. The shadow people told me to say that. It's actually crazy, the shadow people also told me that their one wish is they want for you guys out there to like and comment and subscribe and hit that little bell to make sure you get all the videos that we put out. It's weird that they were so specific with their orders, but that's I'm just relaying what they told us. So keep on watching Top 5 Scary, but do all that subscribing business at the end of this video, because otherwise you're gonna miss the rest of the California mysteries I got for you. Number 4, the Ghost of Hollywood. The Hollywood sign is probably one of the most iconic landmarks on the West Coast. Instantly you see that and you know you're in La La Land. But did you know it might be haunted by the spirit of a Hollywood starlet who took her life years ago? Beneath the monument to Tinseltown's glitz and glamour lies a dark secret that perhaps would be better left buried. Peg Entwistle was a young actress and a Hollywood hopeful who had a dream, like many before her, to come to Hollywood and become a household name, making it big on the silver screen. She had a small career on Broadway and then traveled to California to make it in the pictures and landed a role in a picture 13 Women. Now, by the time the film had premiered to test audiences, her role was cut almost entirely down to 12 women, causing her to fall into a depression. The film released and was neither a commercial or critical hit. Despondent, Entwistle thought there was no hope for her. On September 16th, 1932, she left her home to climb the Hollywood sign and cast herself off of the H to the hiking trail below. Now, since then, hikers and visitors to Hollywood's famous landmark have reported strange occurrences around the tourist spot. Hikers claim they can smell strange perfume in the air, thought to be Peggy's favorite. Joggers sometimes claim they see an ethereal woman in 1930s with a sad expression walking down the trail. That could also just be Lana Del Rey though. One park ranger, John Arbogast, claims he sees her almost nightly whenever it's too foggy. Sees her sitting, brooding, forever trapped in the place she could never make her dreams happen. This does give me an idea though, maybe a little way to solve everybody's problems. Maybe somebody makes a movie about the ghost and the Hollywood sign, and then instead of blowing your budget on special effects, you ask her to play the ghost. She gets to star in a big movie. You get to make a movie about ghosts. She might pass on. Everybody wins. Win, 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 win. Just make sure if you make that movie, I produce that, okay? So keep me in the credits.
In third place, we have the death of Hugh Watson. Alrighty. Time for a bunch of wild facts. So when a barn in Lansworth burned to a crisp in December of 1976, firefighters found the body of a 77-year-old man who lived alone, had no relatives, and was last seen drinking at the local Pennyburn Hotel in Lansworth, which was a location he was known to frequent often. Pardon me, I totally forgot the part where he had been stabbed 22 times with either a pitchfork or a screwdriver, because you know that's totally normal and not overkill at all. So most theories actually lean more towards the pitchfork theory, and while I get he was found in a barn, that completely boggles my mind. I guess it was a weapon of convenience, but cripes. Detectives have managed to learn that the old man had mobility difficulties and walked with the aid of 2 sticks, so they believed he must have been carried into the hayloft where he later died, since he never really could have climbed up there by himself. A post-mortem investigation revealed that some of his wounds were serious, but others were superficial, suggesting that whoever committed the crime spent some time in the barn with them. That same investigation found he died from asphyxia, and over 6,000 people were interviewed in hopes of some kind of information coming to light. Detectives were drafted in from across the region to trace anyone who saw him that night, but so far, we got nothing. Who knows? In second place, we have Teggie. I swear people need to get a lot more creative with naming their river monsters. So many monikers are just poor knockoffs of Nessie, and unknown creatures deserve better than being the equivalent of a dollar store knockoff toy. Just saying. Located in Lintigid, or Bala Lake in English, lies the legend of Teggie. Look, I'm gonna go for the English versions, folks. You've heard me butcher enough. First spotted in 1975, Teggie is thought to be an amphibian around 12 feet in length, described as a grayish brown or black in color, and typically between 8 to 12 feet long. This mysterious animal is believed to have 1 or 2 humps, a long neck, and a roundish football-sized head with a crocodilian snout. So there have been sightings throughout the years, but kind of like Nessie, nothing super substantial. A witness in 1975 claims that out of nowhere she saw a grayish object moving in the water, and whatever it was at least 8 feet long and had a small hump in the middle and was moving towards the eastern shore. So when she jumped into her car and drove to the point where she thought the object would come ashore, no sign of her. And when people pressed this witness afterwards for a description, she told them it looked like closest to a crocodile. She returned to Bala Lake the following day and found a very large dead pike on the shore with massive bite marks on it that are believed to have been left by Teggie. So another witness, going by B. Vickers, reported spotting the monster at close range in the summer of 1992. She said it was twilight when she was on the shingle beach of the lake in front of the Catamaran Club, looking for flat stones to skim over the lake's calm surface, when she suddenly turned a full 80 degrees and looked straight at the monster, who was looking right back at her. So about 20 meters away, with its black head and neck clear above the surface of the water. Ooh, fun fact time! One expert has a theory that Teggie can move over land when necessary to feed or breed in other bodies of water or use rivers, which connect to other lakes and the sea to find fresh feeding grounds or, a mate. It's also believed that she could be nocturnal. It's also believed that she could be, like a nocturnal hunter, protected by the darkness and minimal nighttime lighting that is common in rural areas of the UK. Perfect conditions for a shy and elusive creature. Hey look, this all matches up with what I've been saying about introverted sea creatures. Let them have their privacy. In first place, we have the disappearance of Trevelyan Evans. So normally when a shopkeeper puts up a sign saying they'll be back in 2 minutes, they'll be back within the hour. Right? Well, this shop owner and antique dealer, Trevelyan Evans, put up this sign in 1990 and, she hasn't come back. Longest lunch break ever, honestly. So she had been away during the week of her disappearance with her husband Richard, who was renovating the couple's holiday bungalow, and returned to Llangollen on Wednesday, the 13th of June. Fast forward to Saturday, the 16th, she opened her shop, Attic Antiques on Church Street, at the usual time of 9:30 a.m. and had parked her dark blue Ford Escort Estate 200 yards away. And for people like me who are completely vehicle clueless, notice how I stumbled over that because vehicles is just a 90s long blue car. Laugh all you want, but I constantly vex my dad with how little I can verify any type of vehicle, even though I've been surrounded with car knowledge since birth. It's not in the brain. So during the morning, approximately 25 friends and customers had called in, and according to the friends who visited, she appeared, relaxed, happy, and heck, she even made plans to go out that night. And the weather that day was sunny, according to the police, and the town center was described as, busy. At about 12:40 p.m., she left a note on the front door of her shop saying, back in 2 minutes. A well-dressed man was reportedly seen talking to her in the shop shortly before she left the note, but his identity was never confirmed. It is known that she bought an apple and a banana and was seen crossing the nearby Castle Street. Apparently, a banana skin was found in a dustbin in the shop after this time, so it's thought she must have returned there, but it was never confirmed. Her handbag, car keys, and jacket, along with fruit and flowers that she intended to take home, were left behind in her shop, and the car stayed parked where it was. There were 2 more suspected sightings, but both were unconfirmed. So let's dive into this. At 2:35 p.m., a woman matching her description was seen walking out of town along the A5 towards Corwin, beside the Riverside Park. At 3:45 p.m., there was another sighting, this time of a woman walking into Park Avenue from the direction of the River Dee. More than 1,500 names were investigated, and about 700 cars were eliminated from the inquiry. Searches of the river, the canal, mine shafts, and caves in the area were carried out, but nothing. In January of 2001, the case was reopened by police in the hope, new forensic techniques would suggest fresh evidence, but only led to a series of false arrests, including her husband. The case was re-examined in 2010 on the 20th anniversary of her disappearance, but we got nothing. No money was ever taken from her bank account, indicating to the police that she might have been abducted and killed. But the curious thing, she left so much behind, so she clearly thought she wasn't going to be long. And once again, the car was parked less than 100 feet away and stayed there. To this day, the case remains open, with calls for information still being asked for over 30 years later. Hey look, stranger things have happened. I remember back in 2009 hearing about a missing youngling case from the 70s that was finally solved thanks to a deathbed confession. That's the thing. Someone obviously saw something or was involved. Well, you just gotta wait for that person to come forward.
Jumping right into number 5 is the Mary Celeste. Formerly known as the Amazon, the Mary Celeste was an American merchant brigantine under the captaincy of Benjamin Spooner Briggs. In October of 1872, Briggs would captain the Mary Celeste and prepare for the boat's first voyage. Accompanied by his wife Sarah, their young daughter Sophia, and a crew of 8 carefully selected men, Briggs would set course for Genoa, Italy on November 5th, carrying 1,701 barrels of booze. Days after their departure, another brigantine from Canada, the Dei Gratia, would set course for Gibraltar, following a similar route to the Mary Celeste. On December 4th, 1872, the helmsman of the Dei Gratia reported that a strange vessel was heading unsteadily towards it from about 10 kilometers or 6 miles away. The unidentified ship's strange and erratic movements tipped off to the Dei Gratia's captain that something was wrong, and the Canadian brigantine would proceed with caution. As the mysterious ship drew close, members of the crew noticed that there was no one on it, and when it wouldn't respond to any signals sent to it from the Dei Gratia, 2 crew members would board the ship in order to investigate. It was at this point that the pair would find out that this mysterious empty ship was the Mary Celeste. The sails on the abandoned brig were set in poor condition, much of the rigging was damaged, ropes hung loosely over the sides, the compass was broken, a significant amount of water was found in the boat, and its only lifeboat was missing. However, all of the ship's cargo remained relatively intact. The 2 crewmates also found the ship's daily log in a cabin. Its final entry dated at 8 a.m. on November 25th, 9 days earlier. The log places the Mary Celeste's last known position nearly 750 kilometers, which is 400 nautical miles, away. The Dei Gratia and its crew would split up in order to bring the Mary Celeste to their destination, Gibraltar, where they would sell the ship in order to be salvaged. The disappearance of the Mary Celeste's crew is a mystery to behold, as the remains of Captain Briggs, his family, and his crew have yet to be found to this day. And over those years, various theories and explanations have been made. Some say there was an accidental explosion caused by one of the barrels of alcohol aboard the ship. Water spouts damaging the ship is another theory, pirates, or even alien abduction. Personally, I think the crew may have taken the lifeboat deep into the ocean and perished while lost at sea. Make sure to comment below your own theories on the matter. Anyway, regardless of how it happened, the Mary Celeste acts as one of the earliest examples of the Bermuda Triangle's mysterious nature and highlights the dangers that comes with venturing into the unknown. Next up at number 4 is the Great Isaac Cay Lighthouse. Constructed in the mid-19th century on a remote island in the Bahamas, the Great Isaac Cay Lighthouse was a beacon of hope for any mariners trying to navigate the treacherous waters. It stood tall, proud, and bright, warning sailors of the rocks that lurked beneath the waves. The island it was on was desolate, only accessible by boat and inhabited by the keepers of the lighthouse, John and William. It was the keeper's job to make sure the beacon's light remained operational, while performing a fair share of arduous and difficult tasks in order to maintain the lighthouse. And I know, this is starting to sound a lot like the movie The Lighthouse, but this story ends a whole lot differently. On the fateful day of August 4th, 1969, shortly after a storm, a supply ship is scheduled to bring essentials for the keepers, such as food, toilet paper, and the like. However, when the ship arrives, it's met with an eerie silence. When the supply crew noticed that the lighthouse was strangely unlit, they immediately alerted authorities, and a search party was dispatched to the island. Upon arrival, the search party found the lighthouse deserted, and the island it rested on just as desolate. The only clues were some open doors and entries missing from the lightkeeper's log, which only left more questions than answers. Theories and rumors quickly began to circulate after the sudden disappearance, many claiming the 2 lightkeepers were taken by pirates or robbers. Some thought they were killed in a storm. But honestly, if I was stuck on a remote island taking care of a lighthouse, I'd probably find a way to disappear too. Though deep down, we already know who, or rather what, was to blame: the mysterious nature of the Bermuda Triangle. A year after the incident, the Great Isaac Cay Lighthouse was made to be automated so that no other inexplicable disappearances could occur again, and John and William were never seen or heard from again after the incident, marking another unsolved mystery stemming from the Devil's Triangle.
Number 3, the Witch Elm. So Tana French's The Witch Elm is a strikingly powerful character study wrapped around a skeleton in a tree. While Toby is staying at his uncle's family estate, bones are discovered in one of the property's enormous witch elms, plunging the family into an extended police investigation. So Tara French is very open about her inspiration. Who put Bella in the Witch Elm is a very old and very famous unsolved mystery. In 1942, 4 young people discovered a woman's skeletal remains in an elm tree that often grows, with a hollow center while hunting for eggs in the small village of Hagley, England. If I got the name wrong, I apologize. So this was during the Second World War and police resources were kind of stretched thin because, bad things were happening. And despite a myriad of clues, including a wedding ring, scraps of taffeta stuffed into the skull's mouth, her severed hand found some distance away, and unique dental imprints, the woman's identity or exact cause of death could not be determined. 2 years later, the case was close to being forgotten when a spray-painted message appeared on a wall in a nearby town. Who put Bella in the Witch Elm? Public curiosity rose as these spray-painted messages continued to appear across towns over the following decades. Theories range from, Bella being a parachuting spy who became tangled in the tree and fell into the hollow, an occult sacrifice, or most likely, a tragic victim. While the novel has a solid conclusion, the real mystery is left open. Bella's true identity remains a mystery, as does the person behind the spray-painted messages. Number 2, Dracula. Oh no. Alexa talking about vampire crushes. This could go sideways quickly. I finally got around to watching Castlevania, by the way, and I totally get the hype now for sure. Oh, but back to the facts. So the story of Dracula begins when young lawyer Jonathan Harker goes to Transylvania to visit a client, Count Dracula, to deal with some business matters. The Count keeps him prisoner, and Harker guesses his dark purposes. He's traveling to London to plant terror and harvest victims with which, to fill his appetite for the red fresh stuff. No, I can't say that word. In England, Lucy moves from happiness for her future marriage to an unexpected lethargy. Her friends are anxious about her getting weaker and paler day by day. Also, they notice some strange wounds on her neck. So Lucy's friend, who just so happens to be a doctor, decides to call on Professor Van Helsing to take matters into account. I'm sure y'all know how the rest of the tale goes at this point. So in his 1962 biography of Stoker, Harry Ludlam suggested that Armin Vanbury, a professor at the University of Budapest, supplied author Bram Stoker with information about Vlad Dracula, commonly known as Vlad the Impaler. Professors Raymond T. McNally and Radu Florescu popularized the idea in their 1972 book, In Search of Dracula. Okay, alrighty, I've made y'all wait long enough for the real-life mystery. In true vampire fashion, history isn't quite sure how Vlad's life ended or where he's been buried since. We know he passed sometime between December of 1476 and January of the next year, but that's the closest thing we have to any kind of certainty. The Austrian chronicler Jacob Unrest stated that a disguised Turkish contract killer took out Vlad in his camp. In contrast, Russian statesmen, whose name I cannot say, who interviewed Vlad's family after his demise, reported that he was mistaken for a Turk by his own troops during battle, causing them to attack and kill him. Now, a lot of folks have commented, this account by noting that Vlad had often disguised himself as a Turkish soldier as part of military ruses. According to Leonardo Botta, the Milanese ambassador to Buda, the Ottomans cut, Vlad's corpse into pieces as a precaution. Allegedly, Vlad's head was sent to Mehmed II, where it was placed on a high stake as, an example. His decapitated head was allegedly displayed and buried in Voivod Street, today Bankalar Kadesi, in Karakoy. I tried. It is rumored that Voivoda Han, located on Bankalar Kadesi number 19, was the last stop of the skull. Local peasant traditions maintain that what was left of Vlad's corpse was later discovered in the marshes of Snegov by monks from the nearby monastery. The place of his burial, though, is another fun unknown, so according to popular tradition, that's where he was buried. However, the excavations carried out by Dinu V. Rossetti in 1933 found no tomb below the supposed unmarked tombstone of Vlad in the monastery church. Historian Constantine said Vlad was most probably buried in the first church of the Kamana Monastery, which had been established by Vlad and was near the battlefield where he was killed. Maybe. I guess we'll never know, unless the team that found the remains of Anastasia is determined to find Vlad next. Number 1, The Woman in White. Unlike many of the classic Gothic novels, this one is written in a comparatively clear and concise manner. The language is still distinctly from that era, but without the confusing conversations and wordy paragraphs that tend to say very little. Also, the interaction between characters feels believable. The setting of the seems timely, and the rate of narrative development, just right. The novel centers around a mystery of two women's fates that weaves through various narratives, creating a compelling courtroom drama with remarkable grace. Walter Hartwright, a young art teacher, finds himself entangled in a web of mystery and intrigue after he encounters a distressed woman in white, Anne Catherick, who has escaped from an asylum. Later, Walter becomes a drawing teacher at Limeridge House, home to invalid Frederick Fairley, Laura Fairley, and Marion Halcombe. Walter and Laura fall in love, but Laura is betrothed to Sir Percival Glyde. Walter realizes Anne's Marian's connection to Laura and her distressing past. Laura receives an anonymous warning against marrying Glyde, and Walter discovers Anne's involvement and becomes convinced that Glyde placed her in the asylum. Despite financial concerns and Laura's love for Walter, she marries Glyde. Concurrently, Walter embarks on an expedition to Honduras. Upon their return, Sir Percival and Lady Glyde attempt to manipulate Laura's fortune, but she resists and reveals a secret that could ruin Glyde's life, leading to a plan to switch their identities. And Marian falls ill while overhearing part of the plan. The identity swap is successful, with Anne buried as Laura. Walter, Laura, and Marian live incognito in London, aiming to restore Laura's identity. Walter uncovers Glyde's secret, his illegitimacy, which invalidates his inheritance. Glyde dies in a fire while trying to destroy evidence of his fake marriage. To prove Laura's true identity, Walter discovers Anne's parentage, making her Laura's half-sister. Now, the betrayal of an Italian nationalist society provides leverage, leading to a confession. Laura's identity is restored, and, everybody, the bad people, meet their demise. Walter and Laura marry, securing Lime Ridge for their son upon Frederick Farley's death. So while this is a fictional sensation novel, it is based on a true story. The outline of the story that Wilkie Collins borrows from is an actual case of a woman's wrongful imprisonment from Maurice Majon's 1808 book, Recueil de Causes Célèbres. At the time, women could be easily imprisoned in lunatic asylums if they became embarrassing or inconvenient to their husbands or fathers. In addition, before the passing of the Married Women's Property Act of 1882, all of a wife's assets passed automatically to her husband. In fifth place, we have the unexplained Phoenix Lights. On March 13th of 1997, which just so happens to be the year I was born, a string of 5 lights in a V formation appeared in the sky above Phoenix, Arizona. The National UFO Reporting Center reported that the first call about the lights came in at around 8:16 p.m. from a retired police officer in Paulden, which is about 2 hours north of Phoenix. After that, the National UFO Reporting Center began to receive a slew of calls from south of Paulden, suggesting that the lights were moving in a southeastern direction. There are more than 700 witnesses who saw the lights, including pilots, police officers, and military officials who lit up the National UFO Reporting Center's switchboard, demanding explanations, and rightfully so. Most of the witnesses described the lights as part of a singular massive craft that made no noise. Around 10 p.m., a second set of as many as, 9 lights appeared in the sky. A laser printer technician named Dana Valentine claimed to have witnessed the craft from his yard in Phoenix, saying that he could see the outline of the mass behind the lights and was certain what he saw was technology unknown to mankind. Air traffic controllers could not see the lights on the radar, despite seeing them in the sky with their own eyes. Frances Barwood, the Phoenix City Councilwoman who launched an investigation into the event, said that out of the over 700 witnesses, 700 that she interviewed, the government never interviewed even one. This is once again where I'm giving the US government some well-deserved side-eye. How do you not interview a single witness out of 700? That is way too many people for this to not be credible. And once again, like I've said many times before here, so many witnesses happen to be credible air personnel. I'm sensing a pattern of behavior here and not a good one. In fourth place, we have a case of reincarnation. In the 1940s, Florence and John Pollock were married, and in 1946, after having 2 sons, they welcomed their first daughter, who was named Joanna. In 1951, Florence gave birth to another baby girl named Jacqueline. Despite their age differences, the 2 girls had an extremely close bond. Joanna liked to take care of Jacqueline and saw herself as the ultimate big sister. Since her mother was busy running the family's grocery delivery business, Joanna saw herself as a second mother to her little sister. They enjoyed playing dress-up and pretending, and generally enjoyed being around each other. Thank goodness, because parentification is often more traumatizing than beneficial. Eerily, Joanna would always state that she would never grow up to become a lady, that she would remain young forever. No one took her seriously and chalked it up to a very creative imagination. Kinda like how I've always had. On May 7th of 1957, mid-single digits-year-old Jacqueline and double-digits-year-old Joanna were walking to church with a neighborhood boy, as they often did. While they were walking, a car came up behind them and it hit them going at an incredibly high speed, killing all 3. The Pollock sisters died instantly, and the boy they were with died from his injuries at the hospital. The woman who was driving the car had just lost her wards in a custody battle and was feeling angry and upset and was actually trying to take her own life. While learning about her ward's deaths, Florence fell into a deep depression that lasted a very long time. John, on the other hand, had the spiritual belief that the girls were in heaven or that they'd be reincarnated. He said he would have dreams about the girls and also felt some sort of presence in their bedroom. He claimed that every time he would go in there, he felt like he wasn't alone, like they were watching over him. Now, John apparently always had a fascination with reincarnation and would pray to God to bring his daughters back. Okay. Florence, on the other hand, was a very strict Catholic and never toyed with any of John's notions about reincarnation. This put such a strain on their relationship that they almost got a divorce. However, somehow, they stayed together and got pregnant again. Congrats! I guess from the beginning of the pregnancy, John thought that there were 2 babies, despite the doctor only claiming 1. However, John kept insisting that there were 2, and the doctor was proven wrong on the day that the twins Jillian and Jennifer were born on October 4th of 1958. Twins never ran in the family, and Florence never felt like she had 2 fetuses growing inside of her. Eerily, the newborn twins had the exact same birthmarks that Joanna and Jacqueline had, and Florence started to seriously consider her husband's beliefs as more than just nonsense. When the twins were old enough to talk, they began identifying and requesting toys that belonged to their sisters, who had passed on, and would point out landmarks that only Joanna and Jacqueline would have known, like the school they attended. They would sometimes panic upon seeing cars and knew about street safety without either of their parents telling them about it. The story of the Pollock sisters made its way to Dr. Ian Stevenson, a psychologist who studied reincarnation. After studying thousands of reincarnation cases, Dr. Stevenson wrote a book telling of 14 cases he believed to have been real, including that of the Pollock sisters. Reincarnation is such a wild thing to think about. Personally, I don't know if I'd want to start all over with all the current knowledge and trauma that I have and then add more. I think I'd rather just be wiped clear and restart. Nah. Let me know in the comments what you think though, and if you want to be reincarnated or just hit restart.
Number 3. Frederick Valentich. Our next mysterious case is Frederick Valentich, an Australian pilot, a well-trained aerial ace. He had 150 hours of manned flight experience and was permitted to fly alone, provided it was in good weather conditions. He also had a love of extraterrestrial life, a deep desire to find that unknown above. Well, Valentich might have got his wish. Tragically, it might have cost him his life. The year was 1978. Frederick Valentich was performing a 125 nautical mile training flight flying to a small landmass called Kings Island. While at 4,500 feet in the air, Valentich thought he had seen something with him. The Melbourne Flight Service insisted that there wasn't anything in the air with him, but Frederick radioed back and said that there was something on his tail. He claimed that he saw something glowing with 4 repeating bright lights and was rushing past him, and he described it as shiny, metallic, and chrome and looking like a small manned craft. Now, unsure what was happening, Valentich on radio to ground control told them that he was experiencing engine troubles inexplicably. Could this strange flying object be the source of these unexpected problems? Valentich complained out about whatever was following him to the Melbourne Flight Service, saying, "It's hovering and it's not an aircraft." Those would be the last words anyone ever heard from Frederick. Minutes after that last transmission, he went silent and the plane, or the mysterious craft, was never found. An intense search revealed nothing. No sign of the man. The only lead was a local farmer alleging that the day Frederick disappeared, he saw what looked like a civilian aircraft seemingly fused with what looked like a saucer. The farmer told authorities he was worried about being dismissed as a crackpot, so he didn't tell anyone what he saw that day. What do you think? Should he have checked his eyes better? Or was he perhaps the last person to see the remnant of Frederick Valentich before he was carried off into who knows what? Number 2. Michael Rockefeller. When Michael Rockefeller was born, he was born with a silver spoon to a lineage of millionaires in the late 1930s. His great-grandfather, one John Rockefeller, is one of the richest men to have ever lived. The Rockefellers had hoped that Michael would follow them in the family business. Michael, however, had other ideas and wanted to use his millions of dollars to goof off and take it easy, which is what most of us would, I think. Michael had wanderlust in his heart and a deep interest in anthropology, specifically focused on Nigerian, Mayan, and Aztec cultures. Michael's father sat on a board of a museum in New York where Michael would discover this passion, hoping to one day open a collection of indigenous art in New York. After some discussions with the Dutch Museum of Ethnology, terrible name, Michael had decided he would set out to the massive island off the coast of Australia, at the time known as Dutch New Guinea. In 1961, he set off to collect the art of the Asmat people who lived there. It would be a one-way trip. The Asmat people that he was going to study were very disconnected from the rest of the world. They had previously seen Dutch colonizers, but otherwise they weren't getting a ton of visitors. The Asmat believed that the land beyond their island was inhabited by spirits, and they saw the Euros and the Americans as supernatural beings that had come over from across the sea. Michael and his team were allowed to study the people, but were banned from purchasing or taking anything, which held a great deal of significance to the Asmat. Nonetheless, Michael was thrilled with everything he'd been finding and could not wait to open his exhibit. In November 1961, Michael was on a boat accompanied by other anthropologists when a sudden squall threw the boat off its course. 12 miles away from the shore, but Michael insisted he could swim for it, and he was never seen again. The Rockefellers would spend the next few months spending a small fortune trying to find Michael, but gave up after never uncovering anything. The case went cold for years, but officers believed that Michael hadn't been lost to the water, but was rather offered as part of a sacrifice. His head chopped off, his flesh eaten, his bones made into weaponry, you know, fun stuff. An investigator, one Carl Hoffman, uncovered this while filming the Asmat people. He saw a group of men acting out a scene, miming the act of, removing someone's head from the rest of their neck and attacking them with spears. Now, we can't really find this footage, but through interpretation and translation was a stern warning to the other villagers that Hoffman reported. Pop your ears open and take a listen. Don't you tell this story to any other man. I hope you remember it, and you must keep this for us. I hope this is for you and you only. Don't talk to anyone, to other people, or another village. If people question you, don't answer. Don't talk to them because the story is only for you. If you tell it to them, you'll die. Or any other village because the story is only for us. I probably shouldn't have shared it just then, now. Maybe just scrub that. Number 1, Lars Mittank. Lars Mittank is a young German man who became infamous in 2014 when his disappearance captured the attention of the world. Last seen on airport security footage, he's been called the most famous missing person on YouTube. Wow, isn't that a lovely title? I'd put that right on my resume. In July 2014, Mittank was vacationing in Varna, Bulgaria, I've heard lovely things, with a group of friends. Apparently things were pretty unremarkable until an argument about football at a bar turned into a brawl. You see, Mittank was a Bremen man and he was getting into an argument with some nasty Bayern fans. I actually don't know nothing about German football. Clear that up in the comments. Mittank would suffer a ruptured eardrum and was told to stay on the ground, for flying could damage his ears even further. So Lars decided to stay in Varna just a little bit longer while the rest of the party would return back to Berlin. Now here's where things take a turn for the strange. CCTV footage from the airport shows Lars behaving strangely, for lack of a better word. Dropping his luggage, running in a sprint, hopping a fence, the kind of things you would do if you were running away from somebody. His final text warned his mother to cancel his credit cards as he believed he was being pursued. This footage was the last time he was ever seen, as he vanished without a trace shortly thereafter. Both German and Bulgarian authorities launched investigations, but nobody found anything. Hospital records turned up nothing, and outside of a few disconnected sightings of alleged hitchhikers which could have matched descriptions, nothing was ever outright confirmed. So what happened? What happened? There are theories. Some speculate perhaps that the medication he was prescribed was causing a psychological breakdown, combined with the paranoia of being attacked and reeling from the attack earlier in the week. The doctor who prescribed that medication, though, noted he never even filed the prescription, and the doctor was perplexed and concerned with the seemingly causeless change of behavior.
Number 1. The Gurdon Light in Arkansas. Near a railroad in Arkansas flies an incredible unsolved mystery. Floating above and around the tracks, the bright light has been seen in many colors. Orange, blue, pink, green, you name it. Hundreds of people hike for hours in search of the railroad, hoping to see the light for themselves. The locals believe that the light is the ghost of a railroad worker, as the light resembles lanterns that workers used to carry around. This belief is further supported by the case of William McLean and Louis McBride. In 1931, William fired Louis, which led to Louis ending William's life. The reason behind Louis being fired is publicly disputed. Some people say that Louis had messed with part of the train track in such a way that a train may derail, while others say Louis had asked William for more hours and then was denied the request. Louis McBride later claimed that he had ended William's life after he'd been accused of tampering with the train tracks. Louis McBride was sentenced to the electric chair, and the glowing light made its first appearance shortly after. There have been several documentary crews hoping to reveal the mystery of the light. Even scientists have attempted to find the cause, but no theory has ever been proven. Some have attempted to say that it is merely highway lights, but according to historians, the light appeared before the highway lights did. Others have said that the light is made from underground crystals with extreme pressure being placed on them, causing them to charge and then release sparks. Neither theory has ever been confirmed. The light still glows to this day, and if you want to see it, head down to Arkansas on an overcast day and wait until nightfall. Then you may be fortunate enough to catch a glimpse of the Gurdon Light. Number 2. The Black Forest Haunting. Moving is a scary experience, but nobody ever thinks that it's going to be deadly. In the middle of a Colorado forest laid a secluded, fully furnished home. Alex Lee had just purchased it and was moving in with his children and wife. Unbeknownst to them, the previous owner failed to include haunted on the house's amenity list. The family began to experience strange occurrences, repugnant odors, flashing lights, and strange sounds. The family attributed these to random bad luck, but when shadowy figures began lurking in the forest, and the odor turned into a painful chemical burn that would tug at their throats, noses, and eyes, the family decided to take some action. They installed motion detectors, thinking that they were the victims of some annoying pranks from teens. But the motion detectors began to alert them even when seemingly nothing was there. The system had detected 62 break-ins, and the authorities had traveled to the home over 40 times, never finding any evidence of criminal activity. Steve Lee decided to install more cameras into the home, allowing him to see the beings. He caught random flashes of light, glowing orbs, and disconfigured creatures with faces. The family had once come home to all of their lights flashing, the sounds of footsteps on their roof, and orchestral music with rattling chains coming from the woods. Finally, the family realized that they needed to find someone with expertise in the paranormal, so they called the hit supernatural sighting show, Sightings. The crew arrived and were greeted by the ghosts with the same amount of kindness the family had been, 0. The crew's cameras were knocked off of tripods, something attempted to possess a producer, and the medium declared that there were at least 20 spirits in the house. A shaman theorized that the house was built on top of a portal between two realms, living and dead, making it a hotspot for demonic entities to prowl. Though the spirits passing through weren't all necessarily harming the family or haunting them, they were passing through, which explains the multitude of disturbances. Others theorized that nothing supernatural was occurring at the home. Instead, they believed that it was the location of top secret government experiments. Steve Lee even claims to have seen uniformed and armored men lurking around the property.
Number 3. The Yonaguni Monument. You've heard of the lost city of Atlantis, surely. Of course you have. It's one of the best Disney movies you forgot about. That's a story for a whole other video. Well, what if it wasn't the only lost underwater city out there? Have you ever heard of the Yonaguni Monument? The Yonaguni Monument has sometimes been called Japan's Atlantis, and it refers to a strange, eerie underwater rock formation just off the coast of Yonaguni Island in Japan that has had people scratching their heads for years. It's a massive structure consisting of several flat rock slabs arranged in a way that seems like an intelligent life put it together. Now, some people say that this structure could be completely natural, resulting from years of erosion and tectonic activity. Certainly, stranger things have happened, and it wouldn't be completely impossible for something to form this way, but the way it exists now, the way it sits, it seems deliberately carved out, and it seems like it was an important structure to someone. Perhaps a monument, a temple, some sign of a lost city, hence the Atlantis comparisons. Is it possible this was evidence of a lost civilization buried beneath the ocean waves, forever forgotten to history? The monument being completely submerged has been fuel for the fire of speculation. Was it always underwater? Did it end up there over time? Did the water raise around it? Did the land used to look significantly different? It makes it pretty difficult to study as well, making it just that little bit more elusive, as if it wasn't mysterious enough as is. But let's be real, it was probably aliens. It was almost certainly aliens. Number 2, the Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle. Now there's an exquisite ancient mystery, one of the certified classics, something that's eluded us for years and will probably continue to do so. It's been referred to before as the Devil's Triangle, and it's host to all manner of mysterious incidents and unexplained phenomena. One of the more infamous incidents linked to the Bermuda Triangle is the disappearance of Flight 19 in December 1945. 5 Navy bombers vanished during a routine training mission alongside 14 crew members. Gone. Zilch. There was an extensive search effort, but nothing was ever found. Not so much as a bolt off the hull, a boot fished up, a hat, nothing. It was as if they were swallowed up by the void. Naturally, people went a bit wild with theories on this one. Anything from aliens, electromagnetic anomalies, alternate realities, no clipping into the back room. You know, pretty serious academic stuff. But it's bizarre. Another particularly good Bermuda baffler for you is the case of the USS Cyclops. In March 1918, the 542-foot long cargo ship carrying over 300 crew members vanished. during its voyage from Barbados. No wreckage, no survivors ever found. Certainly you would think a ship that big with that many people would leave behind a little bit of evidence, right? What happened? Were they swallowed up by the very seas themselves, pulled to Davy Jones's locker by the Kraken? Or are they somewhere we can't reach them, in a place between worlds and time? The region is known for all sorts of weird stuff too, involving electronic malfunctions and compass deviations. It makes it seem like there is just something bad in the air out there. Maybe just bad vibes? Certainly seems that way. At number 1, the Dorset Mass Grave. Oh, this one is a doozy, and it is one of the scariest and most confusing archaeological discoveries ever found. Let me ask you, what's more fun than a barrel of monkeys? A barrel of Vikings? Well, how about a mass grave full of headless Viking bodies? No? Well, you and I find different things fun, I suppose. Way back in the yesteryear of 2008, a group of archaeologists were on a fairly routine digging operation in Dorset, a quaint little seaside town in England. They were supervising a digging operation to improve local roads and were on set to see if there was anything of note to find, you know, if they came across an old coin or an old arrowhead or something you could stuff in a museum case. For the first few days of the job, there wasn't anything particularly noteworthy discovered until they came across the mass pile of 54 entangled Viking corpses, all missing their heads. I guess they thought that was probably kind of interesting. If it was just a bunch of headless Viking bodies, that'd be one thing. But the mass grave was wrapped in confusing details. Their skulls were missing, but as well their rib cages, arms, and leg bones were all scattered around, this is disgusting, surrounded by discarded teeth. No clothes or weaponry was recovered. So what in the Allfather's name happened here? Because absolutely nothing I can imagine is pleasant. Sounds like Vikings opened up a portal to hell, went really wild with it. The teeth found around the grave had all been filed down neatly, which is very interesting. Now, it goes without saying that Viking dental surgery could not have been painless, meaning the process had to be excruciating, suggesting it was either done by a very careful tormentor or done to themselves to intimidate their opponents to show just how gritty they are. I actually don't know which of those two are preferable. They actually both sound pretty horrible. Now, as good as my theory about a bunch of Vikings opening up a portal to hell and being offered as a sacrifice is, archaeologists had some different ideas. They theorized that by looking at the wound patterns on the ribs and torso, they were surgical precise blows, which wasn't really the kind of thing you'd expect from a rabid Viking warrior flailing around a sword in a brawl. The archaeologists thought that these men were either offered up as part of a horrifyingly sadistic ritual, or it was a big time mass sentencing where everybody was sentenced to the death. Explains too where all the weapons and gear had gone. These men had been brought here from somewhere else and then left here for a long time. We might never know the truth behind the Dorset mass grave, and I'm gonna be honest, that might be fine with me. Some secrets are better left buried. Anyone else feel though that all those Viking skeletons, that might be like the world's most terrifying puzzle to put all that together? Morbid thought, and that's something to end the video on.
In at 5, the Chase family vault. The first account of the Chase family vault incident was published in 1883 in James Edwards Alexander's Transatlantic Sketches. According to the writer, Mrs. Goddard was buried in the vault in 1807, followed by Anne-Marie Chase in 1808 and later Dorcas Chase in 1812. However, following the death of Thomas Chase, the vault was once again opened. But what was discovered baffled everyone. The caskets of the Chase girls were said to have been disturbed, having been tossed from the place, left in a very confused state. A similar incident was found to have occurred upon opening the vault for 2 burials in 1816 and 1819. It had been stated, I quote, "Each time that the vault was opened, the coffins were replaced in their proper situations, that is, 3 on the ground side by side and the others laid on them. The vault was regularly closed. The door, a massive stone which required 6 or 7 men to move, was cemented by masons, and though the floor was sand, there were no marks of footsteps or water. The last time the vault was opened was in 1819. Lord Combermere was then present, and the coffins were found confusedly thrown about the vault, some with their heads down and others up. What could have occasioned this phenomenon? In no other vault in the island has this ever occurred. Was it an earthquake which occasioned it, or the effects of an inundation in the vault?" End quote. What are your theories? Were the spirits of the Chase family not yet at peace, lingering within the sealed off vault, desperately seeking to escape? Or was something less sinister at play? An earthquake? A very strong jokester? No one will ever know. In at 4, Jeffrey Daniels. On November 10th, 1997, a man in his late 30s checked into a Super 8 motel in Aiken, South Carolina. He paid in cash but left no name, stating to the staff that he wanted to leave all that behind. That night he ordered food, but when it arrived he did not answer the door, and a do not disturb sign was seen hanging on his door with a handwritten note that read, "I am not responsible for the consequences." 3 days later his body was found. He had committed suicide. However, his method of death had never been released to the public, which has posed many questions. No identification was discovered at the scene, only 2 bottles of antidepressants. However, the labels were removed. Upon investigation, it was discovered that the mystery man had stayed at a number of local hospitals following a handful of failed suicide attempts. The only name he gave? Jeffrey Daniels. He supplied a social security number and a New York address, however both were fake. The mystery man's true identity was never discovered, or why he so desperately sought to remove his existence and leave behind all evidence of his life.
Number 3. UFO sighting. In December 29, 1980, Betty Cash saw something on the outskirts of Houston near Dayton that would change the course of her life forever, as she made a close encounter of the third kind. She was driving her friend Vicki Landrum and Landrum's grandson home one night at 9 p.m. when the three of them noticed a bright light in the sky. Betty Cash described it like this: "We didn't know what it was, but we knew there was something that was lighting up the sky. We all began to feel heat, and all of a sudden Vicki screamed for me to stop. When I stopped, I went forward and her handprint was embedded in the dash of the car, and I thought, well, I've got to see what this is. So I got out, I walked towards the front of the car, and I stood there looking up, trying to figure out what this object was. Then a diamond-shaped object appeared with flames shooting out. The heat was tremendous. When I reached for the door handle, the door was so hot I couldn't even begin to open it. The only thing I was thinking was, are we gonna get out of here alive? And then seemingly as soon as it appeared, it disappeared, and Landrum stated that moments later, a large squadron of black helicopters soared over the area. After the choppers cleared, Betty took the Landrums home and retired for the night. The next morning, however, Cash said she was extremely sick, suffering from nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, weakness, and an intense burning in her eyes. Now here's where things get curious. Landrum and her grandson all reported the exact same symptoms. Over the next few days, Cash said her symptoms worsened so much, with large blisters forming on her skin, she eventually had to be taken to a hospital where she was treated for radiation poisoning, and she lost large patches of skin and clumps of hair. To date, there has never been a conclusive answer to what happened to Cash and Landrum. The US government denied any involvement and said they don't have any diamond-shaped crafts like that in their fleet, and it wasn't from their government. Was the military testing new technology on unsuspecting victims? Was it a craft from another world touching down for a moment? There are so few answers and so many questions for this unsolved mystery. Number 2. The death fields. There is a stretch of I-45 highway between Houston and Galveston that is notorious to locals due to the string of violent, horrific crimes that have all occurred there since the 1970s. Since the first body was discovered, it's been thought that anywhere from 33 bodies have been discovered there, and the truly horrifying thing is how little police and authorities seem to have on this case. Initially, detectives believed that this work was that of a serial killer, due to the sheer number of bodies being found in the area, but over time some have wondered if it could be multiple criminals. Most of the victims have been young women, typically around college ages. The FBI has said that the agency's behavioral experts have created a profile of a possible killer, but there are no known witnesses to any of the crimes and no common person to connect them all. An official statement that was given by the FBI said that the signs point to one killer, although multiple killers can't be ruled out. Given the nature of the area where the bodies were found, it was likely someone with roots in the area, someone who would have known these fields were a good place to hide a body. In 1998, a man named Edward Howard Bell was arrested and claimed to have been involved in the deaths of 11 girls in Galveston County. And although he was a suspect in the aforementioned I-45 case, police unfortunately didn't have enough evidence to tie him to those larger crimes. Only one death on the I-45 was ever convicted, when Louisiana police arrested Kevin Edison Smith in 2009 on a completely unrelated charge. A DNA test found that it matched the body of a girl who had disappeared from Texas in 1996 and whose body was tragically found on the I-45. From this confession and conviction from two different criminals, it's suspected that multiple people were were involved in these grisly crimes. Hopefully one day this case can be closed for good and the I-45 can go back to just being a highway. And number 1, the Servant Girl Annihilator. Perhaps one of the most infamous criminals to ever live in Austin, and to this day is still anonymous and possibly will forever. The Servant Girl Annihilator, absolutely brutally named, I cannot believe they called him that, was a serial killer who preyed on young women in Austin between 1884 and 85. He is thought by some to be America's first serial killer, hardly a badge of honor if you ask me. He attacked wantonly, and despite his name, he was not exclusively targeting women. He fatally attacked 7 women, 1 man, and additionally seriously injured 6 women and 2 men. All of his victims he would attack indoors while asleep and then would finish the job outside, leaving them to be found. His victims were all posed in similar manners and were all found with a sharp object inserted into their ears. Texan lawman started a manhunt for the criminal, arresting 400 men in the year of 85 in a desperate attempt for any leads on who was terrorizing the community. Interestingly, the top theory of elected officials at the time is that the Servant Girl Annihilator couldn't possibly have been committing all of these crimes by himself as one lone deranged criminal, but rather an identity shared by a group of men carrying out heinous acts all together. Now, in the end, no one was ever successfully accused of being the Servant Girl Annihilator. And what happened to him was additional police patrols and civilian militias around Austin ended up scaring the Annihilator off. Or so you think. A theory, although an outlandish one, is that the Servant Girl Annihilator would move to London to continue his crimes, as 3 years later, the Whitechapel killings would start and Jack the Ripper would terrorize the streets of London, leading to some people suspecting that maybe these 2 lunatics were connected in a way. Think about that, a globe-trotting serial killer wasn't content with just one, had to move, get 2 different scary nicknames. Imagine if both your nicknames were Servant Girl Annihilator and Jack the Ripper. A little much for one guy, if you ask me.
In 5th place, we have the sunken kingdom of Cantre'r Gwaelod. I swear I do look up pronunciations for words, I really do. Anywho, welcome to a place that has a lot of things in common with the legendary Atlantis. Cardigan Bay is home to some outstanding coastal trails overlooking the bay, with many people saying that they can see glimmers of buildings underneath the water. And that has led to the story of the sunken kingdom, a city that was once thriving that had been lost to the waves due to the carelessness of a lockkeeper called Scythonen. People still claim that you can see the buildings and hear the bells ringing out to this day. So it was originally a fertile and prosperous kingdom, with no fewer than 16 heavily populated cities, and was said to occupy a lush, fertile area that laid on a stretch of land running between Ramsay Island and Bardsey Island, which is now Cardigan Bay, West Wales. But it was like low-lying. A number of steep embankments and gates have been built to protect the land from flooding. There was a system of gates to allow water to enter the kingdom in order to irrigate the agricultural pastures. The kingdom was ruled by Gwyddno Garahir, and he had made his friend Scythonen guardian of the sea defenses, a role that included making sure the gates were shut every night. However, after a night of revelry at the king's palace, Scythonen stumbled drunkenly into bed without checking that the gates were closed, and unfortunately, it happened to be a stormy night that night, and the high spring tides broke through the defenses, quickly flooding the entire area and forcing its people to escape to the hills. So, there is physical evidence that inhabited land did disappear under the waves during the period that the tale is set, as well as the stumps of an ancient sunken forest that can be seen at very low tide at Yenislas. Archaeologists have also found a timber walkway dated between 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, which was probably built so locals could continue to live in an increasingly waterlogged environment. In 1770, a Welsh scholar by the name of William Owen Pugh reported seeing sunken human habitations about 4 miles off the Ceredigion coast, between the rivers Ystwyth and Teifi. Human and animal footprints have also been found preserved in the hardened top layer of peat, along with burnt stones that came from ancient hearths. In 4th place, we have the Berwyn Mountains UFO, known as the Roswell event, after similarities with the infamous Roswell extraterrestrial event in the US. The cause of this 1974 phenomenon is still very much up for debate, something I like to hear. So on the evening of the 23rd of January in 1974, residents of the Berwyn Mountains area in northern Wales reported a loud noise and a bright light in the sky. A Ministry of Defense investigation found that there were about 5 other reports of UFOs seen over the UK at 10 p.m. that same night, which is when this incident happened. 3 sightings were in the home counties, 1 in Lincolnshire and another in Sussex. Witnesses reported seeing a bright light in the northwest which seemed to fall towards the horizon. An expert who undertook independent research into the Berwyn Mountains incident for the British Astronomical Society reported that a fireball was visible over most of the UK that night. Now, sightings were received from Somerset, Norfolk, Manchester, Manchester, and Edinburgh, which is noted. The fireball descended from about 120 kilometers in the sky to about 35 kilometers before disintegrating over Manchester. UFO experts claimed that a UFO crashed and the British government covered up the military's recovery of a crashed spaceship. Witnesses claimed to see a bright ball of yellow over top before feeling a huge tremor underfoot. Now, many have tried to make sense of it all, and the list of theories is as long as my arm. And still, no one really knows what happened, not even those who live in the Berwyn Mountains.
Number 3, the Queen Mary. Now this next one is a beloved tourist spot. It's one of the most famous ships in the country, and there are few ships in the United States even half as haunted as the Queen Mary, a decommissioned ship that was converted into a hotel in Long Beach, California. It's stately, it's lush, it's got all the comfort and modern amenities of being a Navy man, bursting with restless spirits. The ship was christened in the mid-30s by the Queen Mary herself. That's why they named her that, and it was retired 3 decades later. It's since been converted into a hotel where guests can go and rent out a stateroom and pretend they're crossing the Atlantic in style. Now, there are a variety of spots inside the Queen Mary that are said to be congregation points for all things supernatural and strange. Perhaps if you know already anything about the Queen Mary, the most famous is Stateroom B340. Now, this was a problem before the place was even haunted. In 1948, a passenger, Walter J. Adamson, passed away in the room under unknown conditions. Nothing really came of this event until 1966, when a woman who was staying in B340 reported that she was woken up when the bed covers were pulled away and she saw a spectral man standing at the foot of her bed, and it was no room service. She screamed and rang for a steward, but as soon as the steward arrived to assess the situation, the man had vanished. Now, guests staying in this room claim they hear someone knock at the door in the middle of the night. The Mary's maids too complain that they find water running in B340 when no one's been in it in days. People have reported all kinds of ghosts around the pool as well. There's a woman in an old wedding gown people say they see, a young boy in a suit, a cloud of steam appearing out of nowhere, and then a girl in a blue and white dress who disappears in an instant, or maybe it's a gold and black dress, I'm not sure. Whatever the case, there's so many ghosts up in the Queen Mary, it's definitely worth checking out if you've got an EMF reader in your suitcase when you're going to California. Number 2, Griffith Park. Now, if you're a real avid cinephile, a student of the silver screen, perhaps you'd recognize Griffith Park for its use in a ton of Hollywood productions. The sprawling, rugged, mountainous set is home to a lot more than memorabilia for Hollywood. It's also said to be home to spirits and haunted by a century-old curse. It's said to have started all the way back in 1863, when Donna Petronilla, the niece of land baron Don Antonio Feliz, was cut out of her will. She was spurned and placed a hex on his land and cursed him for this indignation. She vowed that the land would never turn a profit for him, and that as long as he lived there, he would suffer misfortune until his untimely death, and anyone who was stupid enough to own the land afterward would get the same treatment. Now, local historians say the man who negotiated the ranch's rights was slain in a saloon duel, and the land's new owner was fatally struck by bandits in Mexico, so not looking good. A wealthy industrialist would end up buying up 4,000 acres of the land in the 1880s, but he ended up donating the land to the city of LA after strife and all sorts of malfeasances were causing problems with his ownership. He ended up striking his wife in a rampage. Now, she survived, but he went to prison for 2 years and passed away almost immediately after his release. Pretty suspicious, pretty strange. The landowners all died in rags, their reputation tarnished, and now that it's LA property, Griffith Park wasn't making anyone particularly rich. Was Donna Petronilla's curse that effective, or just a series of sheer coincidences? There are some who say Donna still watches over the land, ensuring her vengeance is carried out forever. Some visitors to Griffith Park claim that they see her spirit haunting the ground. Her vengeful ghost is said to appear as a lady in an all-white dress who materializes before locals for a moment. And number 1, Mount Shasta. Standing nearly 15,000 feet in the air, Mount Shasta is a beautiful peak. And, if you believe the legends, it could be home to some of the strangest thing in the entire country. Really, just about every conspiracy theory out there has been leveled to this mountain at one point. We got UFO sightings, strange disappearances, paranormal hauntings, a lost city, lizard people. If there is a conspiracy about something strange happening in California, the odds are good it'll eventually reach Mount Shasta. This is even true of GTA 5. You look up Mount Iliad, there's so many weird mysteries going on there. Virtual, real, it's everywhere. The history history of mystery at oh, the history of mystery. That rolls off the tongue beauty. The history of mystery. I'm gonna say that like 12 times. Sorry, editor. The history of mystery at Shasta goes back pretty far to the indigenous roots of the area. For the indigenous groups there, the mountain is a sacred place, sharing the territories of the Shasta, Wintu, Achimawai, Atsagewi, and Modoc, who all date their lineage back to when the mountain still erupted. Oh, it was a volcano. I kind of slid that under the door, but this thing used to like shoot lava. To the Modoc people, the mountain is home to the Gamakma, the creator in their stories, and where the original bones of the Modoc people were first placed. Some observers still bring offerings to the mountain and to the old gods who are thought to reside over there. Tales of mythical creatures like Sasquatch are fairly common around the area and have been for years too, but like I said, that is just the tip of all the weirdness that's going on out here. One of the more interesting mysteries, and definitely the one I find most interesting, come out of Shasta is that of a lost city. There are some who speak of Lemuria, a theorized continent believed to have sunk over the Indian or Pacific Ocean. Theorists claim that some people survived this catastrophe and now the Lemurians live below Mount Shasta, presumably waiting until they can come and take over the earth, or maybe they're just chilling with advanced technology. Who's to say? This is where the lizard people come in, because there are people who believe that the Lemurians are actually the fabled lizard people. They live under Mount Shasta, and this is where they come to have meetings about what rap stars they're going to endorse to control the Illuminati. Of course, there's also the claims of UFO sightings. One particular flying saucer seen in February 2020 made rounds when a cloud in the sky looked exactly like a flying saucer, copying Jordan Peele's Nope. Officials denied it as just a lenticular cloud, but hey, take a look and decide for yourself, because it's definitely odd. So Mount Shasta, nothing but a good trail to hike up, or is it a home to a series of mysteries, bubbling and bursting, just waiting to erupt?
Number 5, the Phantom of the Opera. Am I primarily kicking off today with this one because I have a fondness for the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical? Perhaps. Granted, today we're discussing the original tale from Gaston Leroux himself, but I'm sure I'll be watching or listening to the 25th anniversary performance later. Oh right, the story, the focus. Come on, Alexa. In the 1880s in Paris, the Palais Garnier Opera House is believed to be haunted by an entity known as the Opera Ghost, after stagehand Joseph Bouquet is found hanged and the noose around his neck is missing. At a gala performance for the retirement of the Opera House's managers, a young, little-known Swedish soprano, Christine Daae, is called upon to sing in place of the opera's leading soprano, Carlotta, who is ill. Amongst the audience is the Vicomte Raoul, who recognizes her as his childhood friend and recalls his love for her. He attempts to visit her backstage, where he hears a man complimenting her from inside her dressing room. He investigates the room once Christine leaves, but he finds it empty. Later on, Christine meets with Raoul, who confronts her about the voice he heard in her room. Christine says she has been tutored by the Angel of Music, whom her father used to tell her and Raoul about. Later, Christine visits her father's grave, where a mysterious figure appears and plays the violin for her. Now, Raoul attempts to confront the figure, but is stricken and knocked out in the process. Back at, the theater, the new managers receive a letter from the Phantom, demanding that they allow Christine to perform the lead role of Marguerite in, the play, and that box 5 be left empty for his use, lest they perform in a house with a curse on it. The managers assume his demands are a prank and ignore them. And what do you know, later, Carlotta ends up croaking like a toad, and a chandelier drops into the audience, killing a spectator. The Phantom, having abducted Christine from her dressing room, reveals himself as a deformed man called Eric. Eric intends to hold her prisoner in his lair with him for a few days, but she, convinces him to change his plans when she unmasks him, and to the horror of both, beholds his skull-like face. Fearing that she will leave him, he decides to hold her permanently. However, when Christine requests release after 2 weeks, he agrees on the condition that she wear his ring and be faithful to him. On the roof of the opera house, Christine tells Raoul about her abduction and makes him promise to take her away, where Eric can never find her, even if she resists. And unbeknownst to the duo, Eric is watching them and overheard the whole conversation. The following night, the enraged and jealous Eric abducts Christine during her performance, the Persian, into Eric's secret lair in the bowels of the building. Still, they end up trapped in a mirrored room by Eric, who threatens that unless Christine agrees to marry him, he will kill them and everyone in the opera house by using explosives. Under duress, Christine agrees to marry Eric and shows him love for the first time in his life, which he crumbles from and agrees to allow her to leave. He allows the Persian and Raoul to escape, although not before making Christine promise that she will visit him on his death day and return the ring that he gave her. He also makes the Persian promise that afterwards he's going to go to the newspaper and report the death. Later, Christine returns to Eric's lair and returns the ring and buries him, somewhere he will never be found. So the story was inspired by a real-life tragedy that took place in a Paris theater, leaving one person dead. The incident happened at one of Paris's opera houses, Palais Garnier, during a performance of an opera. So Act 1 of the opera had just finished when a fire in the roof of the opera house melted through a wire holding a counterweight for the chandelier. causing a crash that injured several, and one passed away. The story inspired Gaston Leroux, who combined the story with rumors of a ghost wandering the opera house to create the Phantom of the Opera as we know and love it. Number 4, The Fall of the House of Usher. Now if that title sounds familiar, you'd be correct. I'm not going to elaborate why, because I very much stand with the actor strike that's currently ongoing, so let's dive right into the story and the real life mystery behind it. This story was written by, Gothic horror legend Edgar Allan Poe, and I'm now realizing just how much Gothic horror had an impact on my psyche, if you couldn't tell by looking at me. The story begins with the unnamed narrator arriving at the house of his friend, Roderick Usher, having received a letter from him in a distant part of the country, complaining of an illness and asking for help. As he arrives, the narrator notices a thin crack extending from the roof, down the front of the house, and into the adjacent lake. It is revealed that Roderick's twin sister Madeline is also ill and falls into death-like trances. The narrator is impressed with Roderick's paintings and attempts to cheer him up by reading with him and listening to his improvised musical compositions on the guitar. Roderick sings The Haunted Palace and then tells the narrator that he believes the house he lives in to be alive and that this sentience arises from the arrangement of the masonry and vegetation surrounding it. Further, Roderick believes that his fate is connected to the family mansion. Roderick later informs the narrator that Madeline has passed away and insists that she be entombed for 2 weeks in the family tomb located in the house before being permanently buried. So the narrator helps Roderick put Madeline's body in the tomb and realizes that Madeline's body has rosy cheeks. Hey, sometimes that happens after death. Over the next week though, both Roderick and the narrator find themselves increasingly agitated. A storm begins and Roderick comes to the narrator's bedroom, conveniently situated directly above the house's vault and tomb, in an almost hysterical state. Throwing the windows open to the storm, Roderick points out that the lake surrounding the house seems to glow in the dark, just as he depicted in his paintings, but there's no lightning or other explainable sources of the glow. The narrator attempts to calm Roderick by reading aloud from a medieval romance entitled The Mad Tryst, a novel involving a knight named Ethelred who breaks into a hermit's dwelling in an attempt to escape an approaching storm, only to find a palace of gold guarded by a dragon, along with a shining brass shield hanging on a wall. Ethelred swings his mace at the dragon, which dies with a piercing shriek, and when he attempts to take the shield from the wall, it falls to a floor with an unnerving clatter. As the narrator reads of the knight's forcible entry into the dwelling, he and Roderick hear cracking and ripping sounds from somewhere in the house. When the dragon's death cries are described, a real shriek is heard, again within the house. As he relates the shield falling off the wall, a hollow metallic reverberation can be heard throughout the house. At first the narrator ignores the noises, but Roderick becomes increasingly hysterical and declares that he has been hearing these sounds for days, and that they're being made by his sister, who was apparently alive when she was entombed. The bedroom door is then blown open to reveal Madeline, covered in red from her escape from the tomb. In a final fit of rage, she attacks her brother, scaring him to death as she herself expires. The narrator then runs from the house, and as he does, he notices a flash of moonlight behind him. He turns back in time to see the moon shining through the suddenly widened crack in the house. As he watches, the house of Usher splits in two and the fragments sink away into the lake. Poe's inspiration for the insane Usher twins may have been two real-life Usher twins, James Campbell Usher and Agnes Pye Usher. They were the offspring of Luke Noble Usher, an actor who performed with and was a close friend of Poe's actress mother. Much as in the story, the real Usher twins are believed to have gone, well, insane. But here's the mystery. Nobody knows why the real Usher twins went insane, or if they do. I couldn't find it in my research, so feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong.
And at number 3 is the USS Cyclops. The USS Cyclops was one of 4 bulk cargo ships built for the United States Navy a few years before the beginning of World War I. It gets its namesake from the Cyclops, a race of one-eyed giants from Greek mythology. The whopping 542-foot collier set sail from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil on February 16, 1918, carrying a cargo of manganese ore bound for Baltimore, Maryland. It was due to arrive at its destination by the 13th of March. The ship, under the command of Lieutenant Commander George W. Worley, had a crew of 309 officers and men on board. The ship, having been built in 1910, was not on its first journey. In fact, this was a trip the boat had made many times before, and one its crew was very familiar with. However, there were a couple problems with the ship. One was that the ship was struggling with engine trouble after departing, and the other was that the ship was carrying too much cargo, leaving it to be overloaded. The crew did not see these issues glaring enough to delay their journey and made their way through the Atlantic anyway. Time would fly and the boat's journey seemed to be going as planned, the Cyclops being last seen by another vessel only 4 days before their date of arrival. Yet, there were no reports of the cargo ship reaching its intended destination of Baltimore. In fact, the ship was nowhere to be found, and contact with the rest of the US Navy and the world had been completely cut off. This was during World War I. The original assumption of most was that the USS Cyclops had been destroyed in combat. However, there was never a distress signal sent from the ship, nor were any remains found of the ship. Even after a thorough search of the area it was last known to be, these remains were still not found. It had completely disappeared. Reports indicate that there was a violent storm around the area that the military vessel would have been a day after it was last seen. A common theory behind the USS Cyclops vanishing is that the terrible storm sank the boat, as it was already suffering from engine troubles and was overloaded with cargo. Though, that still doesn't explain the lack of any remains or signals sent by the crew, but the mystery doesn't end there. The same exact vanishing would happen to two of the Cyclops' sister ships, Proteus and Nereus, during World War II. They would both disappear without a trace like the Cyclops before them, both within the Bermuda Triangle. Speaking of World War II, is Flight 19 at our number 2 spot. Flight 19 is the codename of a training mission that would happen on December 5th, 1945. It was comprised of 5 bomber planes taken from the Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale in Florida. Flight 19 was tasked with navigating a triangular route over the Atlantic, known as the navigation problem number 1, before returning to base. Weather conditions were reported to be clear skies and calm winds. Sounds simple enough, right? Think again. Because shortly after takeoff, radio transmissions from the 5 torpedo bombers indicated the pilots were disoriented. They claimed that they couldn't identify their location at all. The flight instructor at the time, Lieutenant Taylor, told the team that he believed that they were flying over the Florida Keys, an incorrect calculation that would send them off course and towards the Bermuda Triangle. Radio control would continue to try guiding the pilots back to base, but things started to go wrong when radio contact with Flight 19 suddenly came to a stop. I'm sure by now you know the story. A massive search and rescue operation was launched involving several aircrafts and ships, but no trace of Flight 19 was found. In fact, during the search for Flight 19, another aircraft vanished without a trace, adding to the mystery. Many blame the disappearance of Flight 19 on natural magnetic anomalies and unexpected storms, but the truth to where those 14 crew members on the training mission went remains unknown. With all these disappearances across the years, it begs the question of where all these boats and planes are disappearing to. Do you guys have any theories? Let me know in the comments. And topping it all off at number 1 is none other than the Ellen Austin. The Ellen Austin was a massive 3-masted American schooner built in 1854. The vessel would regularly ply between London, England and New York, crossing through the Bermuda Triangle. It wouldn't be until 1881, during another London to New York trip, would the Ellen Austin and its crew come across another ship on the Atlantic. This unknown ship was seemingly adrift and unmanned, so the crew of the Ellen Austin boarded the abandoned ship to investigate. The crew found that the ship was in perfect condition, but completely empty, raising questions as to why it was abandoned in the first place. After this discovery, the crew of the Ellen Austin decided to split their crew and tow the ship in order to salvage it and make some extra money. During this towing, the two vessels were hit by an unexpected storm, separating them from each other. However, the Ellen Austin and the abandoned ship would find each other again. However, the abandoned ship was vacant once again. The crew of the Ellen Austin would try to tow the ship again, but much to their dismay, the same exact thing would happen. Big storm, the ship gets separated, and the crew is completely gone, with the ship still intact. And before they could find the ship again, what little was left of the Ellen Austin's crew would depart hastily in fear of this cursed abandoned ship. This mysterious ship and its disappearing crew members quickly became a legend of the Bermuda Triangle, as reports of seeing the same abandoned ship were made, not only years, but centuries later, still in perfect condition. The true origins of this mysterious ship remain unknown, but it is said that the ship is an embodiment of the Bermuda Triangle's curse, vanishing any seafarer that tries to board it. But honestly, it's got nothing on any of the crazy pirates you see in Pirates of the Caribbean, so there's that at least, right?
Number 5. D.B. Cooper. One of the most infamous disappearance cases in history, and I'm gonna be honest, probably my personal favorite unsolved mystery of all time. If you haven't heard the story of the real-life daredevil heister, Mr. D.B. Cooper, you're in for a treat and then some. Depending on your definition of success, you could argue D.B. Cooper might be the most successful criminal in history, since not only did he get off with quite an impressive take, but he got away with all his crimes and avoided capture, if he's still alive, that is. On November 24th, 1971, a man using an alias of Dan Cooper walked up to the ticket counter at Portland International and booked a one-way ticket to Seattle, claiming that he was on business. He was technically correct in that assessment. Once on board the plane, Cooper passed a note to a flight attendant, and he was not asking for an extra bag of peanuts and fluffing his pillow. No, he was just letting the attendant know that he had brought a bomb on board the flight and demanded $200,000 and 4 parachutes. And if he caught a whiff of any funny business, he'd turn this plane into a national tragedy on the 6 o'clock news, see? So, you know, nothing unreasonable really. I make all those demands whenever I'm hangry, pretty normal stuff. So the plane landed in Seattle, as originally planned, and authorities were summoned to deliver the ransom money and parachutes to Cooper. The passengers were relieved and eventually let go, but the flight crew was stuck with their new boss, Mr. Cooper, who'd taken them hostage. Cooper seized the plane, planning a flight path to Mexico City, but midway through the flight, Cooper, who was a huge fan of the film Point Break and wanted to pay homage to it, jumped out of a plane with all of the money. DB Cooper jumping out of that plane with a suitcase full of money would be the last time anyone ever saw him. He jumped out of that plane and into the stuff of history book legends, the Hall of Fame of heisters. Move over, Payday crew, this guy's got you beat. Despite extensive searching, not a hair of DB Cooper ever turned up. Some speculate, rather bluntly, that perhaps he miscalculated the angle and splattered somewhere across the northwest and the heist wasn't as impressive as we thought, while others imagined that he got off easy. He's knocking back Mai Tais on a Hawaiian island, enjoying the spoils of his loot. But who was the guy to begin with? A career crook on one last job? Someone trying it out? Someone snapping? Several theories suggest he was ex-military, special forces, which would explain his proficiency. In fact, the leading hypothesis is that he was ex-military. We may never know who the real DB Cooper is, and that's fine. That's the way he'd want it. And if we don't know who he is, it makes it that much more fun for us. He could be any one of us. He could be you, he could be me, he could be... I'll stop talking there. And if you're looking for more scary videos and strange stories out there, we've got all of that and then some. If you can think it up, we've probably done a video or two on it. We've got quite the catalog. So click on through, hit subscribe, and please tickle that little bell and make sure you don't miss a single scream. But would you kindly do that at the end of this video, because I got 4 more missing persons cases ready for you now. Number 4, the Mary Celeste. Our next mysterious case is a bit of an outlier, a little bit of a cheat, I know. It's not just one person going missing, it's an entire ship. How does that happen? December 1872, the captain of the Mary Celeste, one Benjamin Briggs, cast off to New York to travel to Italy for unknown reasons, but probably for the tomatoes. The ship was kept to a rather tight crew. A staff of 8, plus Briggs's wife and daughter, were enough to man the vessel. The voyage seemed like it went pretty well until another vessel, the Delgradia, came into contact with the Celeste and were chilled at what they'd found when they recovered the ship drifting aimlessly. As rescuers boarded the ship, they were greeted with a maritime mystery to forever haunt them. The ship seemed to be in perfect working order, no signs of damage or distress. Had it not been found freely floating, they'd assumed the ship was just built. Aside from a single lifeboat missing, the ship was in good condition, the hold stocked with food and water. The crew's personal belongings were scattered about. The table was set for a meal, as if the crew had been minutes away from breaking bread. So what happened? What reasonable captain would abandon a perfectly serviceable, well-stocked ship? While reasonable explanations were offered, theories of piracy or mutiny prevailing. Now, the ship being relatively untouched does call into question the notion of piracy, as I don't know how much you know about pirates, but they didn't tend to leave the rum behind if there is any. Any pirate captain worth his salt would have plundered that thing down to the floorboards. And there didn't appear to be any struggle at all, so no forceful evacuation, nobody kicked them off the ship. So with rationale out of the way, we've nowhere left to turn but blind and wild speculation. Theories of supernatural beings, cursed gold, vengeful spirits, sea monsters, Davy Jones. Take your pick of whatever nautical bedtime story you think could have overtaken the Mary Celeste. You know what? Let me know down below. I love pirate ghost stories more than anything. Perhaps it was a bit of sea madness, cabin fever. Maybe it's whatever happened to those 2 guys in the lighthouse happened to them here. No matter how you slice it, the vanishing of the Mary Celeste is a head scratcher of a mystery. More lost souls to the darkness that lurks below the ocean's water. Wary yourselves against the whispers that echo the seas, for the spirits of the Mary Celeste may still be watching, eager to claim another.
In 3rd place, we have the incident at Dyatlov Pass. On the first night of February 1959, 9 ski hikers had set up camp on a slope in the Russian mountains, enjoyed dinner, and prepared for sleep. But something went catastrophically wrong because the group never returned to civilization. On February 26th, searchers found the hikers' abandoned tent, which had been ripped open from the inside. Surrounding the area were footprints left by the group. Some wearing socks, some wearing a single shoe, some barefoot, all of which continued to the edge of a nearby wood, which is where the first 2 bodies were found. shoeless, and wearing only underwear. The scene bore marks of death by hypothermia, but as medical examiners inventoried the bodies, as well as the other 7 that were discovered over the months that followed, hypothermia was no longer making sense. As a matter of fact, the evidence made no sense at all. One body had evidence of a blunt force trauma, another had third-degree burns, one had been vomiting a red liquid that should still be in their veins, yet another one was missing a tongue, and some of their clothing was found to be radioactive. Alrighty, this is where I would just call it a day and condemn the entire freaking area. That's one too many weird variations to make sense in my brain. Also, anything radioactive? Burn it. Burn it all! Theories about what happened include KGB interference, drug overdose, UFO presence, gravity anomalies, and a Yeti? The most recent theory involves a terrifying but real phenomenon called infrasound, in which the wind interacts with the topography to create a barely audible hum that can induce powerful feelings of nausea, panic, dread, chills, nervousness, raised heartbeat rate, and breathing difficulties. Add that to my list of why I never want to go hiking. Granted, I didn't really want to go hiking in the first place. In second place, we have the Watcher House. In June of 2014, Maria and Derek Broaddus and their 3 spawn were getting ready to move into their new home, 657 Boulevard in Westfield, New Jersey. They claimed the 6-bedroom house was their dream home, and it just so happened to be located a couple of blocks away from Maria's childhood home in one of the top 30th safest cities in the United States. Sounds a little too good to be true if I'm adding my 2 cents to this. 3 days after closing the sale, before the Broaddus family had even begun to move in, a letter arrived in their new mailbox. The letter was addressed to the new owner, in big clunky handwriting, and read as follows. Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood. How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within? 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I am in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I am in one. Look out any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard and at all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one. Yeah, okay. The letter also mentioned specifics about the Broaddus family, talking about the offspring and that the unknown author had seen them, stating that, so far I think there are 3 that I've counted. Do you need to fill the house with the young I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Or was agreed to bring me yours? Once I know their names, I will call them and draw them to me. Yeah, okay. Pardon the narrator voice, I just like to differentiate. At the bottom of the letter, the author used a cursive font to sign The Watcher. Okay, this is where I wish I had a red flag to start waving around, so just imagine it in my hand. Okie dokie? After receiving the letter, the Broaddus family reached out to the previous family who had sold them the house, John and Andrea Woods. They stated that during the 23 years of living at 657 Boulevard, they had never received a letter like that except once, a few days before they were getting ready to move out of the house. The Woods family also stated they had never felt watched in the 2 decades they had lived at the house, and in fact, rarely felt the need to lock their door at night. While they thought the note they received was odd, they threw it away without much concern. Red flag notice again. That's something people should know about. Thankfully, the 2 families went to the police with the letters, and an investigation was opened. The police warned the families not to tell anyone about the letters, including their neighbors who were all suspects. 2 weeks later, even though the Broaddus family still hadn't moved in, they received a second letter with even more chilling specifics about the family, including the offspring's birth order and nicknames. The Watcher also asked if the Wards would sleep in the attic, or would the entire family sleep on the 2nd floor. Who has bedrooms facing the street? I will know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better. This is where I would have done everything in my power to avoid ever going near that place and moving across the country. Nope, 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 nope. Pardon me, stalking and harassment are issues that really get under my skin. Several weeks later, when the Broaddus family had put their plans on hold to move in, a 3rd letter arrived saying, where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you. Okay, by the end of 2014, the case had stalled completely. There was no digital trail, and the mental effects were taking a toll on the Broaddus family. No kidding! That kind of watching over your shoulder can take a mental toll like you wouldn't believe unless you've gone through it yourself. There were no fingerprints and no way to place somebody at the scene of the crime. Only 6 months after they received the letters, they decided to sell the home. Good on them for doing so. This place has since been sold and is currently off the market, while the Watcher's identity still remains a mystery. In first place, we have a case of human combustion. What can I say? I thought I'd end today on a fiery note. On July 2nd of 1951, in St. Petersburg, Florida, Mary Reeser was visited by her son, Dr. Richard Reeser, in her apartment and mentioned during their conversation that she had taken 2 mild sedatives and planned to take 2 more before bed. Hey, whatever helps you sleep. Later that night, she would fall asleep in an upholstered chair for the last time as she would become the victim of an apparent house fire. The next morning, Mary's landlord reported smelling smoke around 5 a.m. But it wasn't until 8 a.m. when she went to go deliver a telegraph to Mary that she would smell the smoke again. She discovered soot in the hallway, and the doorknob leading to Mary's apartment was too hot to grab, so she enlisted the help of nearby house painters to get into the apartment. What they found inside said apartment was truly horrifying. Mary's skull was reportedly shrunk to the size of a cup, and parts of her spine also remained. Her left foot was found still in its black satin slipper with the skin unburned, but the rest of her remains had been, completely cremated. What makes this case even more odd, because that wasn't odd enough, was the environment of her surroundings. Fun science fact for everyone: in order for a body to be cremated, the body must burn at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 to 4 hours. But somehow the surrounding area of Mary's chair and the rest of her apartment were relatively unaffected. The walls had no burn marks and showed no signs of scorching or burned paint. Light switches were melted, but outlets were still completely functional. Candlesticks had melted, but their wicks stood upright. And a stack of newspapers close to the chair was, undamaged. You know, the easily flammable thing. Mary's neighbors were also unaware of the fire. Look, I can write off a list of things that wouldn't faze me from a neighbor at this point in my life, but the smell of smoke is definitely something I would be freaking out about. The FBI eventually came up with some form of cover-up, but I'm not gonna waste anyone's time with that since it doesn't make any sense.
Number 5. The Pyramids and the Sphinx. Famed for giving out riddles to passers-by and would-be kings and keeping even more secrets for itself, the Sphinx and the Great Pyramids of Giza aren't just one of the best tourist destinations in the world, they're a source of never-ending speculation. Were they crafted by aliens? Are there hidden secrets lying within the Sphinx that we don't know about? Almost certainly. Let's dissect them a bit. So the Sphinx, if you haven't heard of it, if this is your first time hearing about it, it's one of the 7 wonders of the world or something, but this might be the first time. It's a massive limestone statue with a lion's body, and let's be real, it's a nice one at that. And the head of a human. Was it always a human's face? There's some speculation and discussion about that. Some researchers have proposed that originally the Sphinx was a monument to the jackal god Anubis, and that his face was refitted at some point in the image of Amenhotep II, a pharaoh from around that era. Now the purpose and origin remains a point of contention to Egyptologists. What was the Sphinx built for? Is it a tomb? A monument? Just something to take photos of? Some people even speculated that the Sphinx is older than Egypt even. A tomb? A monument? Just something to do? Researchers too have speculated that perhaps the Sphinx is older than Egypt even. Erosion pattern on the Sphinx's body appear consistent with water erosion rather than wind erosion, raising all sorts of questions about the climate and geological history. Did Egypt used to be like a lot wetter? And that's just what puzzles people on the outside. The inside of the thing is a whole other can of worms. Some propose that there are unexplored passages or secret chambers containing wondrous treasures, ancient texts, sacred artifacts. I think the Master Sword might even be in there. Some people think there's proof of extraterrestrial life. It's a very widespread conspiracy theory that aliens were involved in the Sphinx and the pyramids and are very closely tied to ancient Egyptian culture. Some limited excavations around the Sphinx have been carried out, but because of the delicate nature of the monument, further digging is a bit challenging. You don't want to be the guy who ruined one of the 7 wonders of the world. They're gonna make fun of you forever if that happens. We could do a whole video on the mysteries behind the Sphinx, and I sincerely hope we do, because we are just scratching the surface of strange stuff going on there. But if you're looking for way more strange stuff, then you already know we have that in spades. We've got just about everything freaky you can think of. We've done a video or 2 on it. So hit subscribe. Please hit that little bell as well so you make sure to get our videos up to date. Don't miss a single scream, but do that at the end of this video because I got 4 more unsolved mysteries for you coming up right now. Number 4, the Voynich Manuscript. The manuscript is one of my personal favorite unsolved mysteries out there, just for how sheer little we know about it. We have nothing. It's kind of a choose your own adventure for mysteries. Is it aliens? Demons? A really convoluted historical prank? If you don't know, the Voynich Manuscript is a strange document written in a handwritten text filled with bizarre illustrations. No one's been able to make sense of it, primarily because it's written in a language that has never been seen elsewhere in human history. It was named after Wilfrid Voynich, the Polish antiquarian who purchased it in 1912, although its ownership has passed through many hands. So what was it written for? And by who? These are the questions we've been asking, and we're probably going going to keep asking over and over. The manuscript is about 240 pages, containing illustrations of plants, astronomical diagrams, humanoid figures, and other strange objects. Despite countless attempts by cryptographers, no one's been able to crack the code just yet. Some speculation has been made that it could be a biology textbook in an encoded language. Some people think it could be the scrawlings of a brilliant alchemist, magic and spell casting we couldn't possibly hope to understand. Some say it's from a forgotten civilization, while others have said maybe it's all just a load of nonsense and is just made by someone who had too much time on their hands and a vengeance against historians who wanted to prank them for centuries. The book is thought to have come from anywhere between the 15th century and the 17th century. We don't even know when this thing was written. Like I said, we know next to nothing about it. Now, if you're feeling clever and inspired, you can find a PDF of the Voynich Manuscript as a free download pretty easily. Who knows? You might be the one to finally crack this case. But hey, don't be frustrated if you end up falling down a conspiracy rabbit hole many before you have tried. I looked through a few of these pages and it took me 30 seconds before I was looking like Charlie from Always Sunny at the conspiracy wall, all that red tape and stuff.
Number 3. The mystery ships of the Great Lakes. Everybody knows about the Bermuda Triangle swallowing ships and planes, but the mystery ships of the Great Lakes is a less known and equally perplexing mystery. Dating all the way back to the 1700s, thousands of ships are assumed to have disappeared or met their demise while traveling across the lakes. To many minds, the ground amount of sinkings is a result of the dangerous weather conditions that the lake provides, and there is no further mystery behind it. But the disappearances are where curious minds begin to wonder that it may not have been so simple. Since the 1700s, boats have traversed the waters of the Great Lakes. They were excellent sources of freshwater fish and natural resources. The lakes had powerful winds, which propelled the boats forward, providing sailors with a fast way to arrive at their destination. And since the 1800s, ships have been sinking and disappearing without a trace. In 1881, the ship of Thomas Hume disappeared. In 1921, the Rosabelle was found floating upside down, empty of all passengers. It looked as though the Rosabelle had collided with another ship, but no other ship was ever recovered, and the cause of the wreckage was never found. Lake Michigan has a space known as the Michigan Triangle, and, like the Bermuda Triangle, it is known as a hotspot for sinking planes and ships. In the 1940s, over 120 planes crashed and sank into Lake Michigan. About 40 of them were recovered. In 1950, a commercial flight flying over Lake Michigan, carrying over 50 people, had a small bout of turbulence before completely disappearing. Over 70 years later, the flight has still not been found. Number 4. The Lost Lemon Mine. One of the most interesting mysteries of the Canadian Rockies is the Lost Lemon Mine. There are many different versions of the story, ranging from insanity, curses, and killing, to outlaws, massacres, and robberies. No matter the differences of the story's specifics, all tales share an agreement on the most crucial piece of information. Somewhere in the Canadian Rockies is a lost gold mine. Many people have scoured the Rockies in search for the elusive mine that promises bouts of fortune and riches, but almost all of their expeditions have ended in horrific tragedies. The first expedition in the search of the mine took place in spring of 1870 with two men, known as Lemon and Blackjack. The two men eventually came across a face of the mountains that was covered in solid gold. The men began to argue over whether they should take the gold now or return in a warmer season for it. Blackjack grew tired of the disagreement and fell asleep, but Lemon stayed awake, tossing and turning with anger. In a rage of fury, Lemon took his partner's life with an axe and began to hear noises coming from the woods. Lemon grew fearful that his partner was haunting him, and so he left the mountains in an attempt to escape the torment. Lemon searched for the mine for years, but the further into the mountains he went, the more voices and torment he endured, which always caused him to turn around and leave. Many people heard about the mine that Lemon and Blackjack found, yet every expedition to locate it came back empty-handed or insane. The Lost Lemon Mine remains unlocated to this day. Some question if the mine ever even existed, or if Lemon had simply gone insane and imagined it. Either way, if you find yourself longing to climb some mountains, consider heading over to the Rockies. Who knows, you may even find some gold. Number 5. The Black Flash of Provincetown. In 1939, a group of children returned home, terrified, claiming to have seen a creature leaping after them from the sand dunes. The parents took this as a case of overactive imaginations, but little did they know, the creature the children saw would begin to strike fear into the heart of their small town. Reports of this creature began pouring in, people claiming to see it standing and watching them. It chased after them, laughing as people screamed, fearing for their lives. The creature was given many names: the Devil of the Dunes, the Provincetown Phantom, but the name that stuck was the Black Flash, as it highlighted how impossibly fast the creature was capable of moving. The Black Flash hasn't caused any physical damage to the citizens of the town. The creature's only goal seemed to be terrifying the residents. People theorized as to what the Black Flash could be: a pranking student, a reincarnation of a similar monster, or just a collective town joke that they all agreed on. The police claimed that they had located the perpetrators behind the Black Flash, but decided to keep the identity a secret. The creature did indeed disappear, showing that there may have been some truth to the police catching the perpetrators, but many questions still lingered in the residents' minds. How could the creature move so fast? And why was the police so against sharing the perpetrator? I suppose the police never claimed the perpetrator to be human.